Today on CLC.
And here it comes. For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders. Jesus Christ, likewise, carried the sins and burdens of all sinners on his shoulders. Is that everything done in the Old Testament is a foreshadow and anti-type, a pre-type of what Jesus Christ literally was going to do. Just look at all the prophets. They are speaking about the one who is to come, the one, the Savior of the world, who's going to come and save those which are his own. 39 books of the Old Testament is a prelude of the one to come. Now let's go to Exodus 39. It's up on the board. I'm going to read from verses 1 to 7. You want to cross-reference this? Leviticus chapter 16. It's a recount of what happens in Exodus 39. From the blue and purple scarlet yarns, they made finely woven garments, or specific garments for worship. That's what it means. For ministering in the holy place. They made the holy garments for Aaron, as the Lord had commanded Moses. By the way, in those 40 days when Moses was up in Mount Sinai, this is exactly what God told Moses. Read it. How everything should work. And by the time we get to Exodus, at least 35 onwards, and 39, Moses does everything according to what God told him 16 chapters ago. And he made an ephod of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twisted linen. And they hammered out the gold leaf, and he added the article, the definite article. It doesn't have it in there, but just makes sense. And they hammered out the gold leaf, and he cut it into threads to work into the blue and purple and the scarlet yarns, and to the fine twisted linen in skilled design. Now listen, verse 4. They made for the ephod attaching shoulder pieces, joined to it at its two edges, and the skillfully woven band on it was of one piece with it, and made like it, of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine twisted linen, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They made the onyx stones. What is onyx? Really black. It's a black beauty pearl kind of stone. They made the onyx stones enclosed in a setting of gold filigree. Filigree is really a finely twisted, I'm sure some of you have seen wedding rings where it's finely twisted gold around the diamond. This is how the onyx stone was upheld, with this like kind of filigree. And here's the important part, and engraved like the engravings of a signet, according to the names of Israel. And he set them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod to be stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Now, I'm not going to get into all the details of that. It actually carries on to talk about the breast piece. It's so beautiful, because that's so New Testament. It's unbelievable. Put on the full armor of God. You get it? This is the armor. This is the clothing, the righteous clothing that the priest is. It's got a direct correlation to the armor of God. Look at verses 4 to 7, really 6 and 7. I want to point out a few points. Listen. The names of Israel carried on Aaron's shoulders. Why? Notice that the ephod that Aaron wore had 6 onyx stones this side, 6 onyx stones that side. And on each onyx stone engraved was in each tribe of Israel. Therefore 12 tribes, 6 on the left, 6 on the right, respectively. Exodus 39. It was, amongst many other things, now listen to me very carefully, it's got everything to do with your Christianity. It was if the high priest was carrying not only the history of Israel from where they came from, because that's exactly what Jesus does. He reminds you that, do you not know that most of you did not come from a noble background? In fact, you were scum. You didn't come from kings and queens. And it goes to remind us of where we come from and what God did. It's almost like the stone of Ebenezer. Look what the Lord has done. Look how far he has brought us in 1 Samuel. But more importantly, the high priest was carrying the burdens of Israel on his shoulders. And Israel was to remember this. Now you're standing before a holy God, and a high priest is called to carry the burdens, the sins, not only his own sin, but the sins of every other person of Israel. Remember, it was only the high priest who could go into the Holy of Holies, only him. Once a year on the Day of Atonement. And remember, he had bells on the end of his cloak, and a rope around his waist in case he just did the wrong thing and killed over and died because he desecrated the temple, almost like Nadab and Abihu, who offered strange fire to the Lord. I find that quite strange because Nadab and Abihu, if you read, I think it's Exodus 25, somewhere around there, they go up the mountain. It's unbelievable, family. They go up the mountain and they see things that almost no man sees. The only way you see is again in Revelation 4 and Revelation 15. They see these things, and yet they desecrate God's temple, and God kills them on the spot. So the high priest was not there to willy-nilly come before God. How's it, bro? I'm here on behalf of absolute and utter holiness. We miss it. We miss it. We think many times God is my homie. He's my friend. Yes, he is your friend if you listen to him and obey his commandments. If you yield your life to him and you're clothed in righteousness, no longer do I call you slaves. You know this over and over. But now I call you friends because you have obeyed my commandments. How can you obey God's commandments on your own? Let me ask you, it's a rhetorical question. You can't. You have to be justified by faith. You have to be clothed in righteousness in order for you to have a new spirit. I will put into them a new spirit. I will call unto myself a people who were never my people. And I will write my laws on their hearts. It's just a continuous thread through the Old Testament into the New Testament. I want to get this across to you. We can sit here in this church, now it's January, until December, and do the same thing. And I'm always amazed that an old Umi at 78 sat in the church for most of his life at the age of 78, gives his life to the Lord. For the first, what were you doing? And he was a deacon. What were you doing? Did you never listen? No, he listened. But his heart was never opened. Do you see the preacher has no persuasion on the congregation? Unless there's regeneration from God himself. You can sit here and still be as dead as a doornail. So it was only the high priest who would make atonement once a year. And they, of course, you would know, they would take the blood of the bull and sprinkle it on the altar on behalf of Israel. You want to correlate that with some biblical texts. In Old Testament again, Leviticus 16, write that down if you want to look into how the tabernacle worked and the sacrificial system. But now you want a New Testament rendering of that, go to Hebrews chapter 9. It tells you exactly why it was there. In other words, the notice what I'm saying, moral governing, and the spiritual governing, moral and spiritual, making sure, like Jesus says, come my children, come like chickens under my wings, come. This is what the priest was to do. This is the pastor's job, come. My job is to preach the word and nothing but the word. So the priest's job was moral, spiritual, and the governing of Israel was upon his shoulders. Jesus Christ, likewise, carried the sins and burdens of all sinners on his shoulders. And this is perhaps another and even more important point I want to make, is that everything done in the Old Testament is a foreshadow and a type, a pre-type of what Jesus Christ literally was going to do. Before we even get to the New Testament, it is the book of Zechariah, the book of Jeremiah, the book of Ezekiel. You can go to any book of Daniel, just look at all the prophets. They are speaking about the one who is to come, the one, the Savior of the world, who's going to come and save those which are his own. So everything spoken about within the pages, at least the 39 books of the Old Testament, is a prelude of the one to come. Isaiah 9, verse 2 to 7. This is a Christmas thing. You only hear this on Christmas. But it's not Christmas. We need to read this because you need to hear this. For us a child is born. For unto us a child is born. The people who walked in darkness, that's verse 2 of chapter 9, have seen a great light. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of deep darkness, on them has shone this light. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice because you, as with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divide the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff for his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, you have broken as at the day of Midian. For every boot of the trampling warrior in battle tumult, and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for fire. And here it comes. For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders. Exactly like the high priest. His shoulder, and his name, what name? The name that is above every other name. His name shall be called, and that Hebrew term is already called. It is, it was, it still is to come. It's eternal. That's the Hebrew rendering of that. His name was called, it is called, it shall still be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and the peace there will be no end on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. And his name is Jesus Christ. The government, everything would be put on the shoulders of Jesus Christ, and he would go to the cross and die for the sins of the world. Now notice 6 and 7 of Isaiah chapter 9. Again, just a reminder, this is 720 to 750 years before Christ even trod the earth. He's predicting and prophesying that Jesus Christ himself one day will completely do away with the Aaronic priesthood and take the responsibility of that priesthood completely on his own shoulders. Indeed, that prophecy comes to pass 2,000 years ago. It came to pass over 2,000 years ago. Now let me give you a few scriptures. You've got a book, write this down. Hebrews 1, 1 to 4. Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. Who are the prophets? Moses, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Micah, Zechariah, Zephaniah. You just carry on. Major prophets, minor prophets. Long ago, at many times, in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these days, these last days, he has spoken to us finally, I add, to us by his Son, whom he has appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world. He is the radiance of the glory of God. What glory? Exodus chapter 40. Go and read it. And then compare that to Revelation. You know what I find very strange? I'm going to repeat this, family. Oh, show us your glory, we sing in churches with a fine-tuned guitar and the cymbals clashing and the bass going. Come down and show us your glory. But every time Christ or God came down, theophany or God himself came down to show his glory, men fell before him as if dead. Woe is me, said Isaiah. John said, I fell dead, as if dead. Show us your glory, Moses says. Show me your glory. But God says it's impossible for man to see me and live, but I will do you, as you know, this favor. I will put you in a cleft of a rock, and I will pass by you. And just by you can see my hindquarters, and you will have enough glimpse of me. He is the radiance of the glory. And by the way, you want to see the glory of Christ? It's an all-consuming fire. Revelation chapter 4, verse 5. And out of his throne room came rumblings of thunder and peals of lightning. And all-consuming fire comes from the throne of God. You want to stand in that glory as you are, you will die. You will die. And he upholds the universe by the word of his power. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as his name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. Hebrews chapter 4, 14 through 16. Since then, we have a great high priest. This is just awesome stuff, family. We have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God. Let us hold fast to our confession. What does it mean, hold fast? What does it mean? It's almost hanging on a cliff with your fingers going white. You're hanging there for a laugh. Has anyone ever been in that situation when you're hanging and your fingers are going white? I have. I know it's like to actually be hanging, and what are you doing? You're going to fall. And you're gripping this as if it is the very last thing in life. Hold fast to your confession. What confession, family? What is this confession? I'm asking you. My beloved, you are mine and I am yours. I yield my life to you. Hold fast to that confession that you made. Not by the will of man, not by the blood of man, but by the blood of Christ who enabled you to make that confession. Hold fast. Let your fingers literally turn white. That's how you're gripping it. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weakness, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet he is without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace. You've got to see this tabernacle in the Old Testament being brought out through Jesus Christ. Now for the first time, you don't need a priest, but now there is a high priest, and you can come into the Holy of Holies and have commune with the Holy One. For the first time, because he is the King, he is Lord, he is the prophet, he is the priest, he is the high priest, he is the advocator of our sins. Do you see the depth and the gravity of that, family? That we may receive mercy and find grace to help in the time of need. But if that all is true, then if he is the high priest, nothing has really changed from the Old Testament. The Old Testament, Leviticus 20:26 says, be holy, therefore, as your Father in heaven is holy. Has anything changed? Actually, Jesus Christ died for the sins of the world, rose from the grave on the third day, ascended 40 days later into heaven, and has anything changed? He has taken his place at the side of the Father on the right-hand side. Has anything changed? Have we lost this verbal communication of, be holy, therefore, as your Father in heaven is holy? You see, we're riding the gravy train of grace, and we forget nothing has changed. In fact, the New Testament, even though grace has come, upholds those very same words over and over and over. Let me give you a couple of scriptures. 1 Peter 15 through 16. But as we who were called, as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct. Be set apart. Be in otherness. Since it is written, Leviticus 20:26, be holy, for I am holy. John 15, verse 18 to 19, from the lips of Jesus. If the world hates you, know that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of this world, if you actually belonged to this world, the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of this world, you're in otherness. Do you see the holiness? You set apart. Because you're set apart, you're not of this world. But I chose you out of this world. I set you apart. I made you an otherness. Therefore, because I did this for you, the world hates you. And no one wants to be hated. My friends have dissed me. Because we've got the wrong goals. We've got the wrong goals. John 17:14 to 19, Jesus' high priestly prayer. I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of this world. They are an otherness. They are set apart. Just as I am an otherness, I am not of this world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one or from evil. That's what I'm asking you, Father, for the purpose of my saints. They are not of this world, just as I am not of this world. Sanctify them in truth. What does that mean? Make them continually holy in what? In truth. Truth sets free. Your word is truth. Your word. All 66 books is truth. As you sent me into the world, so I have sent them into the world, and for their sake I consecrate myself. I set myself apart, that they also may be sanctified, set apart in truth.